After week 9, honestly, it just feels like we're all upset whether we won, whether we lost. The good teams have stuff to complain about. The bad teams, well, you're bad. So that's why we're going to the waiver wire here for week 10. We're going to be giving you players to add or drop. And if you're watching here on YouTube, no, that's not Dave Kluge. That is Jagger May joining me this week. We're going to take a look at the most popular waiver wire ads and whether you should be adding these guys or maybe pass on a few of them. Okay. Maybe sometimes the hype isn't worth it. Jagger, what I want to do here is I'm going to go over some of the most popular guys that are available in less than 50% of leagues. Normally, we do players that are rostered in less than 60% of leagues, or excuse me, less than 40% of leagues. I just want to take a look at some of those more high-profile guys here. So Tank Dell, obviously after the big week, wide receiver for Houston. Chuba Hubbard, running back for Carolina. Jahan Dotson, wide receiver for the Washington Commanders. And Pat Freiermuth, tight end for Pittsburgh. Are any of these guys, I mean, you already told me before the show, none of these guys are available in your leagues, but let's say all 4 of them are available in your league. Who is the player that you're just going to prioritize over everyone?
It's definitely Tank Dell right now, and it's two things. Even though I love Jahan Dotson, and I think they're equal talents, and that's both telling of Tank Dell and what he's done here lately, and of Jahan Dotson and what he did last year and then the last 2 weeks. But it's about CJ Stroud. He had an amazing game. He looks like the real deal, and I want a piece of that passing game. Tank Dell is clearly like the 1B in this offense to Nico Collins. And that, again, not discrediting Nico Collins. That's another guy that I like. But again, Tank Dell across from him, we've just seen it now. Like he had a little, he missed a couple weeks due to injury. But here on out, man, he's been the go-to target. He had like 17 targets the last 2 weeks. He's eating them like crazy. And again, he told everyone he's a route runner, and he's proven it. I had to apologize him. He literally DM'd me for hating on him in the offseason.
No.
I DM'd him back. Yeah, he did. Like I sent a tweet out that just said, I think we're getting too excited about Tank Dell. And he DMs me. He says, noted. So I responded to him. I apologize.
Jagger. Dang. Okay, so Jagger May, noted Tank Dell hater. Got it. Put that in your Twitter bio from here on
I'm
out.
reformed. I'm a reformed hater.
It's interesting because like the way you phrase that, right, is that Tank Dell and Jahan Dotson, it's similar guys talent wise, similar guys production wise. Jahan Dotson obviously had the higher draft capital coming out of Penn State, but we're at a point here when you look at these wide receivers, you actually have to ask yourself, okay, which quarterback do I trust more? And even though Howell's been decent for fantasy, it hasn't always turned into success for his receivers. And it feels like every couple weeks he has like a new favorite guy. It was Logan Thomas for a couple weeks. It was Terry McLaurin for a couple weeks. Curtis Samuel, who was out this last game. And then past couple weeks here, it's been Jahan Dotson. I think I'm going to lean with you as well on Tank Dell there. But also tight end landscape sucks right now.
Yep.
And I know that Kenny Pickett hasn't been great, but I do know that when Pat Freiermuth is in these games, Kenny Pickett does like to target him. And George Pickens isn't going anywhere, despite the fact that he wants to. But if you're struggling with tight end, excuse me, I would be looking at Pat Freiermuth. It's weird that he's available in so many leagues. People just dropped him instead of throw these guys on IR, everybody. Come on. All right, let's move on to the players that are now available in at least 60% of leagues or more. We're going to take a look at the running backs first. Jagger, the first name on here, should fantasy managers be adding Kenneth Gainwell, running back for the Philadelphia Eagles? He's available in 82% of leagues.
Yes, they should, because again, we're in week 9 at this point, and depending on what your roster build is, like I'm a running back fader, so I just stress out and have spicy armpits every week because I don't have a running back. And Kenneth Gainwell is the type of guy that I'm trying to get, because you're chasing the high quality targets and the volume. Kenneth Gainwell's not going to get the volume because DeAndre Swift is a guy, but Kenneth Gainwell is getting those high value touches. He's getting the red zone work. He is clearly the number 2 to DeAndre Swift. And then we at least know that Nick Sirianni isn't afraid to go with the hot hand. So if we see him break out a 15-yarder, I'm sure he'll make contact with DeAndre Swift and just tell him to get comfortable and then roll with Kenneth Gainwell. You want good running backs in good offenses, even if they aren't the starters.
Yeah, that was the point that I was going to add. That last little, punctuation you had there. Good running backs and good offenses, because if and when that opportunity comes, it's going to look really good for Kenneth Gainwell. And we know DeAndre Swift doesn't always stay healthy. So,
Yep.
it's just good to have, especially this time of year. It's good to have these insurance policies on your team. Also, I'm going to be stealing these spicy armpits things. You know that my wife says that when something is like, it's like a little sweaty, a little stinky, she loves to say spicy. So when you said that, it just hit right in my heart. All right, another guy that's been giving us some spicy armpits this year. Wondering, is he going to sign somewhere? Where is he going to go? But Leonard Fournette, running back now for the Buffalo Bills, is available in 86% of leagues. And what we saw this week was that James Cook was the starter once again here for Buffalo. It was a little less Latavius Murray, but it still just wasn't a great performance. And he's just not getting the volume that you want. 6 carries for 20 yards. The Bills are not sustaining long drives. Something seems broken in this offense, Jagger. I don't know what it is. Josh Allen isn't playing poorly, but this offense they're not hitting consistently. And I don't know what it is. To hear their coaches come out and say, we're discovering our identity. It's almost week 10. What do you mean you're discovering your offensive identity? You're competing for a Super Bowl. Like, this should not be what's going on. But if they are trying to look for an offensive identity and they go out and they sign a guy like Leonard Fournette, who has been dubbed playoff Lenny in the past, this is a guy that can maybe help them maintain possession of the ball a little bit longer. They really struggle with time of possession here in the Bills-Bengals game, losing out in that matchup 36-23 in terms of time of possession. The Bengals were able just to control the clock and control everything, get what they wanted. Latavius Murray, his role just kind of keeps shrinking. Fournette was inactive for this game. But next week, the Bills are going up against the Broncos and Monday Night Football. The Broncos have just seemed like a get-right game for every single running back that plays against them. Jagger, would this surprise you if all of a sudden we get a little Leonard Fournette action on Monday Night Football and he looks good?
Absolutely not, because what they're missing is physicality. They're missing it on both sides of the ball. But to stick to what scores those points in fantasy, Leonard Fournette is going to give them two things. He's going to give them pass blocking, and then he's going to give them a little bit of physicality in those high quality areas that I was just talking about with Kenneth Gainwell. In the red zone, look at James Cook's numbers. We've seen his receptions go down, and we have seen his has he gotten like 2 touchdowns this year? I mean, it's been pretty bad and disappointing considering the hype that he has in. So it's clearly a problem. So when you get Leonard Fournette, are you going to have an ugly yards per carry? Probably, but he's going to be in on the passing plays because that offensive line has struggled, and he's going to be in there in the red zone. So again, these are the guys that we want. Now, he's less of a good running back and more of a body. But again, he's a body that's in a good offense that likes to live in the red zone, and that gives us points. So, I mean, if he's not rostered already, I've had him on rosters knowing that someone would eventually sign this guy. So you got to get him on your team.
By the way, you nailed it with James Cook. 2 touchdowns in the season, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. But
Yep.
he has not had a touchdown in how many weeks? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. No touchdowns for James Cook. And coincidentally, the Bills have had their struggles throughout those weeks. So something that's kind of lining up there. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that like button. Give it the old thumbs up-aroo. I don't know why I said thumbs up-aroo. I've never said that once in this show. But also, if you have questions about your waiver wire, your roster, what you're doing, it's week 10, right? Playoffs are almost here. It's ride or die time for fantasy football. Drop those questions in the comments below and make sure you're subscribed to the Football Guys channel because we got a bunch of great shows for you. Jagger, let's continue on here. We got 2 more running backs that we're taking a look at. One of them is Keaton Mitchell, running back for the Baltimore Ravens. He's available in 99% of leagues. I got a feeling that is going to change after this week. My question is this. So much of Keaton Mitchell's production, which I think that's just the easiest way to call it, production came after Gus Edwards was out of the game. The Ravens had a very comfortable lead. Is this something that we can expect going forward? Like, genie's out of the bottle. You can't put Keaton Mitchell back on the bench. You're going to start to work him in. Or is this maybe kind of a one and done? He goes right back to the bench.
To quote Pineapple Express, the monkey's out of the bottle, man. Like to me, you could clearly see that this team needed Keaton Mitchell, and it makes me sad for J.K. Dobbins. Rest in peace to this season, but Gus Edwards, he's been doing what we expected out of him. He's going to grind it out. they're going to use him in the red zone. But Keaton Mitchell adds an explosive element that this offense has lacked in the running game outside of Lamar Jackson. And I think now he may not get 15 touches a game, but I think if he can get 10 of these, then players of his caliber at the combine, I'm pretty sure he was top 3 in speed, and I mean like not just like 4.44 guy. I'm talking sub 4.3. This guy can score at any point. And
Right.
again, we're in week 9 going into week 10. These are some guys that can be your league winners, especially rookies like this. And I know that's a cliche, but with the war of attrition that is fantasy football, you want, again, that's a common theme with these running backs, guys. You want running backs in good offenses, and Todd Monken has a great offense that utilizes these fast players in space. So I'm kind of wheels up for Keaton Mitchell. Again, guys, I'm a zero RB guy, so these are the guys I've spent a lot of fab on. So
I will say this, the next couple weeks for the Ravens are a little tough in terms of running back matchups. They've got the Cleveland Browns and then the Cincinnati Bengals. But after that, they'll have Chargers. They get a bye week, Rams. There's some good available matchups for them. I will say this, Jagger, like what you're talking about there is having good running backs and good offenses. Once again, it's very similar to the Kenny Gainwell talk. Gus Edwards is no stranger to getting hurt. Justice Hill is no stranger to getting hurt. And I think what we see, and I mean, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is like what we see is that good teams, as they get better as the season goes on, they just start to deploy new wrinkles so that the defenses going up against them can't really keep up with what they're doing. The good teams kind of hold on to these things as we get later and later into the year. So Keaton Mitchell being deployed later on in the season adds that new wrinkle for the Ravens offense that might just make them that much tougher to actually defend against.
yep. I think the Ravens, like, especially again, I've heard you talk about this and Dave talk about this, that anybody who's plugged in understands that Todd Monken's offense, they're to me, they're collecting new elements like Infinity Stones, and they're about to snap away the AFC North really fast. And you nailed it. Like, to me, they've got the explosive elements in the running game, and they got a new tool in their bag. The next step is like a guy like Zay Flowers and getting that passing game. What we saw last time with Lamar Jackson, they just didn't need to do it, is the thing. He just didn't need to do anything. So,
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit of how the Dolphins were able to use Devon Achan
mhm.
when if Jalen Waddle missed time or Tyreek Hill missed time or another running back missed time, Achan was thrust into a role, and the talent obviously came through, and that's something I think that we might see with Keaton Mitchell. So I think he's definitely worth a speculative ad at this point. I'm not going to say he's going to go out there and break rookie records or anything like that, but definitely worth the speculative ad. All
Mhm.
right. Fourth guy we're going to take a look at here at the running back spot is Ty Chandler, the running back for the Minnesota Vikings. And he's available in 99% of leagues. I know a lot of you guys are probably saying, we did this before. We've done this already. We had Ty Chandler. We dropped him. There was draft hype. Just stop. But this is less about Ty Chandler and a bit more about Alexander Madison and just simply how bad he has been. And normally we don't want to do this. We don't want to hop on a show and just trash talk a guy, but Madison's been getting tons of volume and just not really doing much with it. 2.8 yards per carry. He just hasn't been able to surpass 44 rushing yards in any of the last 5 games. Normally, a running back, you want them to be able to, I don't know, run and to be able to do that consistently. They just can't. And especially when they get down into the end zone, it's just not working. Now, Cam Akers, who was getting a lot of the goal line carries for Minnesota, was nearing a 50-50 split. It's feared that he's done for the season with an Achilles. And by the way, this is the other Achilles now, not the same one as before. So you're looking at a guy that, unfortunately, if he's trying to make the comeback, it'll be miraculous. But to be back on 2 repaired Achilles, it's going to be tough for him. I look at Ty Chandler as a guy who, once again, it's opportunity. It's kind of getting a bunch of these insurance policies on your bench as we near the fantasy playoffs. Minnesota has the second easiest strength of schedule remaining. And the team, it's Jagger, this is crazy. They have been so competitive as of lately. And we all saw the amazing story and what happened with Josh Dobbs. But I mean, they've won 4 straight here. They've won 4 straight games, and they've been missing Justin Jefferson for a few of those. I mean, are the Vikings like actually still kind of legit contenders now with Josh Dobbs at the helms?
I mean, if you look at how soft that the NFC North is, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, like, the Lions, I think, are the cream of the crop there, but they're a very, very beatable team. We've already kind of seen that, and especially with their defense. And if Josh Dobbs can come in and replicate even a little bit of what Kirk Cousins can do without even their best offensive weapon out on the field, I don't think there's a reason why they should slow down. And then at the beginning of the season, to your point, I thought Ty Chandler was already going to win this backfield. I thought that he was a better
Yeah.
back than Anthony Madison a long time, and it didn't happen. So I'm curious. I don't know if it's like a style thing or what, or maybe my eyes are just lying to me on this one, but it's kind of like another guy that we're going to talk about here a little bit later in the receivers, where they finally, the war of attrition has worn it down to where they have to use their best player. So
Yeah, I don't think your eyes are deceiving you. Maybe, I mean, maybe we're wrong. I don't know, because I felt the same way about Ty Chandler. Like, we could both just be super wrong on this. I looked at him the same way that I looked at Khalil Herbert, and it's a guy that I think as he continues to get that opportunity or when it presents itself, I think he could smash out there on the field. So
yeah.
we looked at 4 running backs here between Kenneth Gainwell, Leonard Fournette, Keaton Mitchell, and Ty Chandler. Out of those 4, you have, let's say, one waiver wire priority for a running back. Who are you going after, Jagger?
I'm probably going to go with Leonard Fournette here, and that's the safe one. Like to me, I'm going like with the safety here. We see what this offense needs in the Bills, and we know what, like, again, playoff Lenny can do, and it's kind of a plug and play thing here. Like I expect him to fall in the end zone a couple of times, has some ugly carries, and grind his way to 9 to 10 points in your flex. So
Now, before we move on here to the wide receiver position, I want to remind you guys, head on over to the audio version of this show. Check it out. We usually do the full version over there. This is just a small part of this show. We do it here on video and the rest of it all over on audio. All we need you to do is when you head over there, help us out. Leave a review, a quick review. It can be an honest review of what you think about the show. And then in that, leave your best idea for a show topic, something that you want to see us here do towards the end of the season or maybe in the off season, and the best idea that we get there. Okay. We are going to give you an automatic bid into the listener league for next season. All you have to do is when you leave that review, take a screenshot and send that to Kluge at footballguys.com. That's for my co-host, Dave Kluge, Kluge at footballguys.com. All right, Jack, let's move on to the wide receivers here, where this first name, he hasn't played yet. We are recording this middle of the day on Monday, so we haven't gotten to Monday Night Football yet, but Quentin Johnston, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. He's available in 69% of leagues. Nice. He is now presumably taking over a bigger role for the Chargers because Joshua Palmer was put on IR.
yep, I think that this is the time where Quentin Johnston can seize that a technically it's a wide receiver 2 role. Mike Williams is out for the season, and
Right.
they spent a first round pick on this wide receiver, so clearly they want to use him. Now, most of us knew that he was going to be a little bit of a project, but again, we have a really good quarterback. We have, at least I think, is a good quarterback, depending on who you talk to on the internet, and then you have a good offensive coordinator, and to me, it's a no brainer. If he's at least talented enough to absorb 4 or 5 targets, I don't think that it's out of the question that he could be 12 points a week. Josh Palmer, I think, it wasn't as great as a prospect as Quentin Johnston was, and he's shown that he can produce. And as we know, these rookies get better as the season goes on. So even as someone who was a noted QJ hater, we're at a point now, especially what he did last week, where I think he ate like 5 or 6 targets. He had his best game of the season, around 11 PPR points. This is a guy that you got to put out there. You want, again, pieces of good offense. We're at the point of the season where you're doing a little bit less digging in the data, and then you're just kind of fitting blocks where they fit now. Quentin Johnston is a block that fits in the Chargers desperately need a wide receiver 2 that is an Austin Eckler role. So
Yeah, Quentin Johnston last week, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 50 yards. He ended up as the wide receiver 47 in PPR. So if you started him, you likely weren't too happy. He gave you 10 PPR points, but everything changes now with Josh Palmer being put on IR. There's going to be just a lot more opportunity here for Johnson. And listen, Jagger, just like you said, I was not a big fan of QJ coming out of college either. I figured he's going to take a lot of time.
yeah.
The thing is that, what's the quote from like one of the, I suck at history, by the way. So I don't remember. It was one president that said like, some are born great, others have greatness thrust upon them. Like, if there
Yep.
was ever a guy who was getting that exact quote and living it out right now, it's Quentin Johnston being put into such a
Yep.
great situation in this Chargers offense. They've got some solid matchups over the next few weeks. The Jets secondary hasn't been as good as it has in the past. Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, they do have a tough matchup against Baltimore, but then New England, Denver, Las Vegas. There's some very winnable matchups here for the Chargers where we're going to keep seeing them throw plenty. So yeah, 4 weeks here at least for the Quentin Johnston train to start taking off. I'm going to get us to our next receiver here. And it's a guy that we talked about a few weeks ago, but he's been injured. It's Zay Jones, wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He came back in for like a little bit. I think it was one game and then left again. And he's available in 78% of leagues now, just because I think that fantasy managers just got frustrated and they were like, okay, I want him back off. But the Jags offense just works so much better with Zay Jones, Jagger. It's weird. Like you'd think that guys like Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk and Travis Etienne, that everything would go better for them because there's, less bigger pieces of the pie going around. Calvin Ridley actually plays
Mhm.
better when Zay Jones is in there. Trevor Lawrence plays better when Zay Jones is in there. The offense as a whole just gets better. He spreads things out. He's able to at least pose a threat to defenses on deep routes. He's just another guy that needs to be out there for Jacksonville. When he plays, he's been averaging 6 targets per game. He's had 2 touchdowns in the 3 games that he did play. Some very beatable secondaries coming up that should require Trevor Lawrence to throw the ball quite a bit. Taking a look at San Francisco, Tennessee, Houston, and the final 2 weeks of the fantasy season, you've got Tampa Bay and Carolina. So if this is a guy that you start to say, okay, I need a spot start, a player who can be maybe a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 for me in certain leagues. There's a lot of those formats of 3 wide receivers, maybe 2 flexes. This is where Zay Jones comes in. So I wouldn't necessarily go out and spend a whole bunch of my money on him. I think he's one of those guys that if you're working with a fab budget, you can probably toss a couple bucks out there and likely get Zay Jones, because I don't think a lot of people are really looking at him.
No, it's crazy. Zay Jones is a guy that I have rostered in dynasty leagues because, like, you have that option of a deeper bench, and I've stuck around. And even when he's been performing, I don't think people can believe the stats that they're seeing. That, like, he, as a guy that we wrote off when he was drafted by the Bills, be like, oh, Zay Jones, who cares about him? Now it's like you said, it's bizarro land over there in Jacksonville. When Zay Jones is out there, all of a sudden Calvin Ridley's a wide receiver 1 again. Everything's right in the world. The one ring has been tossed in the Mordor, and we can all head back to the Shire. It's bizarre, but again, he just makes it work. And again, I keep saying high quality touches and targets. You'll hear us say that in the industry. Like, he's a guy that I think they need in the red zone. When you see that Trevor Lawrence isn't throwing touchdowns, the guy that he was throwing them to was Zay Jones. So to me, this is a gamer move. You want to put him in here. He's a guy that no one is going to think about. You could pick up 2 or 3 of these guys with your fab budget, and then you have playable guys going forward. I think this is a great guy.
I think what happens, Jag, is that we get so upset and so disappointed when we see an offense doing poorly. And I think
Mhm.
so many people are hurt and betrayed by the Calvin Ridley draft value. We all went out and we were drafting him a little bit higher, maybe higher than we should have. I'm still upset that I did not stick to my guns. I had Christian Kirk ahead of Calvin Ridley in rankings, and then I let toxic groupthink get to me, as Arthur Smith would say. And I think that what happened is, like, so many people have now seen that the Jaguars have struggled in the passing game, and they kind of throw out these guys like Zay Jones, and we forget that teams get better, players play injured, things just don't always go as we plan, and then we just kind of write it off. I think that's one of the things that I dislike the most when playing fantasy football, is trying to make it black and white and forgetting about all that gray area. You need the gray area. You need that to understand the context of what's going on with fantasy football week in and week out.
Yep. It's like Sig always says, we play emotionally, this game emotionally
Yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, the way that we change week to week on players, we love them and then hate them instantly, is just it's crazy. All right, take us to our next player here. It's Demario Douglas, wide receiver for the New England Patriots. I wanted to make sure that you got this guy here because I know you're a Patriots fan. I guess I want to just give you like a little bit of happiness with the Patriots because they've been
Yeah.
so bad this year. Sorry. He's available in 79% of leagues. So Demario Douglas, I think the expectations maybe got a little too high, but he wasn't bad this past week. Is this a guy that should be rostered everywhere in fantasy football leagues?
Pop pop. You heard me say it on this Sunday on the start sit show. I, like you said, his expectations were too high going in. Excuse me, I think they were valid, but we forget that Bill Belichick was Arthur Smith before it was cool, and he
Yep.
doesn't care
Yeah.
about fantasy teams or what's even best for his own team sometimes, because he is the ultimate Patriot player. He's this undersized, underrated guy with a crisp route runner that can get open all over the field. And moreover, like I alluded to earlier about finally the war of attrition getting down to a team using one of their best players. Devontae Parker was getting way more burn than Demario Douglas. And you're a Dolphins fan, Alfredo. We've
That's right.
seen Devontae Parker of what he is. We've seen him on different teams. We've seen him with different
Yeah.
coaches.
We
We
know.
know what he is. Yeah. So the fact that they were deploying him and not using a guy like Demario Douglas is crazy. But now that Kendrick Bourne is hurt, they have to bring this guy out there. And I think he brings an explosive element that only Kendrick Bourne brought to this offense. And hopefully, we see a spark in this offense. Again, I'm just a sad Patriots fan, like Alfredo said. So I'm really hopeful.
6+ targets in the last 3 games for Demario Douglas. And then I would say some matchups here where you're not going to have spicy armpits. Indianapolis Colts, New York Giants, Los Angeles Chargers, Pittsburgh Steelers. That's 4 matchups in a row where I'm feeling pretty good about having Demario Douglas in my lineup. As long as he keeps seeing this target volume, this is a guy that I would want to have on my roster.
Yep. And like I said, we know the Patriots offense and how they're going to deploy these guys. So it won't be a lot of touchdowns, but it should be plenty of targets.
Yeah, I would probably prioritize him in PPR leagues over anything else. If we're looking at half PPR standard, I'm maybe not as interested, but PPR leagues, this is a guy that can probably start for you in various weeks. Now, I'll finish us off here at the wide receiver position, and I'm taking a look at Jayden Reed, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. And this one actually kind of feels weird to say just because the Packers offense hasn't been good, but I'm trying to practice what we preach here. Okay. It's, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Just because the offense hasn't been good doesn't mean that there can't be fantasy success found with some of these players. And Jayden Reed's still available in 83% of leagues. And we're looking at, man, Christian Watson, I guess when he hit the ground after that great catch, he hurt everything in his body and he was being looked at for a chest injury, rib injury, back injury, and then a concussion evaluation. Now, if you haven't listened to it, I did the recording with Dr. David Chow last night doing the injury recap for the week. He says that he thinks that what happens is, usually when a player hits their head like that, there's kind of a reverberation throughout the body and you sort of get a little bit of that pain everywhere. And this could be one of those things that is kind of symptomatic of a concussion. So we'll have to see what's going on there. And he does expect Christian Watson to be fine physically. However, when it comes to the concussion, we don't know. So if Watson is going to be out, and even, and this is not to take too much of a slight at a player because I think he's very talented, but even when he's been in, it hasn't been great. So now, you're kind of taking a speculative ad here with Jayden Reed. If Watson misses any time, Jayden Reed becomes a bit more valuable. And I think all of these Packers pass catchers do, talking about Luke Musgrave, Romeo Dobbs, any of these guys become a little bit more valuable with Watson back out again. For Reed, he's had 3 or more catches in 6 of his last 7 games, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but this is a guy that you kind of know what the floor is going to be. And this isn't your deeper leagues where you have to start a bunch of wide receivers and you're looking at PPR type stuff. However, with Jayden Reed, we also know he's got that big playability. He's been able to do that in games past. Some good matchups coming up over the next 2 weeks, Pittsburgh and the Los Angeles Chargers. So once again, another guy who's got sort of that receiving floor in terms of PPR points, good matchups up ahead, and potential opportunity if Christian Watson is to miss any time. And I don't know, Jagger, when we're looking at this team, I haven't really seen anyone become the alpha in that offense. Have you?
Not yet. And I think this is a little bit more telling of Jordan Love than any one individual player. If I had to pick a wide receiver one, I would think it'd be Romeo Dubs. And Jayden Reed coming out, I think he was a top 15 fantasy player for me coming out as a rookie. So it's someone I've been incredibly high on. And I think here it's not even just when Christian Watson has been out, but even when he's been in, I've seen Jayden Reed get used in the red zone a lot. They like to use those rub routes with him and get him open. And especially now that Christian Watson is out, that is someone else where I don't think that Dontavian Wicks is really moving the needle for anybody. And Jayden Reed steps into, I actually think, a wide receiver 3 role. Because like if you guys stay for the tight end episode, then we're going to talk about a guy that I almost like more for a big play element, especially depending on what kind of format you play in.
So my question for you here is going to be, which wide receiver would be your priority on the waiver wire? I think we can sort of limit this and do process of elimination here. I don't think either of us would prioritize Jayden Reed. So let's do it this way. Between the three, Quentin Johnston, Zay Jones, and Demario Douglas, who would you be prioritizing between those three guys?
It's Quentin Johnston because of reason,
I think it has
but
to be. Yeah.
it has to be Quentin Johnston. If we are rational men who use analysis to do this, it's got to be Quentin Johnston.
And
but don't
can we put the pitfall in there? Like it doesn't mean he's going to be good.
Yeah.
Like we may fall flat on our face with this, and both of us have been guys that have said that Quentin Johnston needs to take time. But I don't know that there's anyone else on the waiver wire that you're looking at and saying he's got really good opportunity, good schedule, and a good quarterback.
Yeah, there's no one else on the waiver wires. Like honestly, from running back, besides maybe Leonard Fournette that we talked about, no one else besides Quentin Johnston where I can guarantee that they're going to receive the touches that give us fantasy points. So like that's where I'm at with Quentin Johnston. You got to say that. And then after that, I think it's Zay Jones because again, every time he's on the field with the Jaguars, points happen. So I can't deny it. But yeah. I gotta go with the conventional wisdom here and go and chase the volume.
Theme of the waiver wire show: just get good players and good offenses. It's so simple. Why doesn't everybody just do that, Jagger? Good players and good offenses. Duh. Fantasy super easy. Well, we're going to keep talking about the waiver wire here in week 10, taking a look at tight ends, quarterbacks, and players to drop. Okay, I know that's always the big fear, right? You get the FOMO. You don't want to drop someone, and then all of a sudden they pop off later on in the year, and you missed out on it. So we're going to continue that conversation over on the audio side of this show. To get to that, all you have to do is click the description down below, click the link, head on over to the podcast over on audio on Apple or Spotify, one of these things, man. There's too many podcast platforms nowadays, but wherever you get your podcast, you'll be able to find us over there. Big thanks to my guest today, Jagger May. Stay spicy, everybody. We'll see you on the other side.